Over the past 5 years, I've seen more than 1,500 startup applications, and I've helped founders raise more than $112 million in funding. But it's been so frustrating for me to see most of those founders are making the same 5 mistakes that are leading them to startup failure. And so in this video, I'm gonna be breaking them down and showing you how you can avoid them. And make sure to stick around because throughout this video, I'm gonna be giving you the secrets of how to become one of the winners. Okay, so according to this article by Forbes, 90% of all startups fail. And so one easy way to be a part of those 10% is to follow the advice of good old Warren Buffett. Yeah, that billionaire who drinks Coca-Cola every single day. And although I'll probably not take his dietary advice, his business advice is pretty sound, especially in this quote where he says, "It's good to learn from your mistakes. It's better to learn from others' mistakes." And I can guarantee you that if you're able to avoid just 1 or 2 of these mistakes, that could represent thousands of dollars or years of your life saved. Now, this first mistake is usually caused by first-time entrepreneurs, especially when they're building tech startups. You see, building your first SaaS startup is like walking through a minefield with a blindfold on. And the explosions of these mines is either your money or your time going up into vapor. Hiring expensive lawyers, spending 2 months on your logo, hiring 3 sets of programmers. And entrepreneurs are not always the ones who should be blamed for this. After all, building startups is completely counterintuitive. And unfortunately, founders easily get distracted by watching a bunch of YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, reading all these books, and don't really know how to get started, what to do next, and what to focus on. And there's a high likelihood of failing before you even get started. And guess what? There's a methodology that's being used in Silicon Valley for more than 50 years that allows you to very quickly test the market, figure out whether there's demand, build products for those people, and generate revenue. And so mistake number 1 is actually trying to figure it out on your own through trial and error. This can just be so expensive, and because most founders have limited time and budgets, they have to focus those on doing the right things. So leverage proven methodologies and find a mentor who can help guide you, give you feedback, and work in a group of other people doing this crazy thing called startups. Okay, now the second mistake that startups usually make is coming usually from founders who do not know how to program. And by the way, that accounts for like 99.7% of all entrepreneurs. You see, these days in the digital era, every business is a software business. You at least need to build a website, you probably need to build some automations, you might need to build an app, and all of that requires technical skills. And if you're not a coder, you're usually taking one of these 3 paths that will most likely waste you a bunch of time and money. The first one is to hire expensive programmers. Now, for those of you who have gone down this path, you know that they're gonna quote you anywhere from $30 to $100, maybe $200,000 to build out that first product. That usually actually is the first bill of many, because as soon as you wanna adapt something, you have to go back and get another bill. And in the early stages of starting a business, there are lots of unknowns. And when you launch your first product, you usually don't hit product market fit right out of the gate. So you're gonna need to adapt based on what the actual market needs. But I've seen so many founders run out of money because they can't afford the next bill. Okay, but Christian, you don't have to hire expensive programmers. Well, that brings us to the second mistake, hiring cheap programmers or student programmers. Now here the problem is that it's cheap, but unfortunately you get what you pay for. And most founders that take this path end up with spaghetti code that's completely buggy and unusable and have to throw it away. So yes, it was cheap, but it was a complete waste of money. Now the third path, which is the third micro mistake of this larger mistake, is to try to find a tech co-founder if you don't already have one. Now, the problem here is that it's very unlikely you're gonna meet someone at an event that's gonna be the perfect match, who knows how to build what you wanna build, who's a perfect fit for your company. You're gonna get along with him or her working for the next 5 to 10 years. And founder conflicts actually account for a huge number of startup failures. So going out and trying to find a partner is kind of like going to a bar trying to find a wife or a husband. It's possible, it's just not that likely, right? And so a great way to avoid all those 3 paths is actually to take responsibility if we know that everything requires digital skills, and simply to learn the basics of no code, build the first platform out, test it before you start hiring expensive people or start getting in these deeper engagements. And guess what? Once your product has demand and you have some first customers for that first product, all the investors want to hear from you. Everyone wants to join your team for equity. It's completely night and day. But getting the first step right is the most important. So don't make mistake number 2, which is depend on external programmers. Now for this third big mistake, I want to tell you the story of a man that I met when I was directing an accelerator program in Los Angeles, sat down with him, had coffee. He had a startup. He had already spent $800,000 building out this app. The app was absolutely beautiful and had a couple thousand users using it. But as soon as I dug a little bit deeper and asked a couple of questions, it was super clear that he was going to have to completely rebuild his app to adapt to the business model for him to generate revenue. And that's because he made mistake number 3, which is to procrastinate on your business model. Basically, you say, okay, great, I'm building this to get a bunch of users, and then we'll see how we monetize this. And when I talk about early stage monetization, I have people who bring up the story of Instagram. They're like, yeah, but Instagram, they made $0 the entire lifespan. They had a 10-person team, they sold for $1 billion to Facebook. And yes, if you're seeing millions and millions of people using your app, then fine, that's something that you can sell. But let's face it, most of our apps are not gonna be as popular as Instagram. And that kind of approach really only worked in the early 2000s. So figure out your business model early, test it, generate revenue, because investors will wanna see that. And it's really the only way that you transform your idea or your charity into an actual business. And by the way, if you're enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter. We're gonna give you no-code success stories. We'll give you tips and tricks for entrepreneurs. We talk about AI tools, but more importantly, how to launch, especially if we're non-technical. Now, mistake number 4 is the most common reason for people to fail a startup. And this is usually how it goes. Founder gets a great idea. Founder builds the idea that he has. Founder launches and here's crickets. Founder tries to get customers, realizes that he has to completely change what he's built. And then there's all sorts of unbuilding, rebuilding. It's a huge mess. And that's because you built a product with no market need. And there's a pretty simple way to avoid this problem. It is to test and validate your ideas with customers. First, by talking to them, then potentially doing pre-sales, but ultimately getting the insight from a small number of those users who are willing to pay and building the product that they actually need, want, and are willing to pay for. And even if you have all the money in the world, you cannot buy product market fit, my friend. So validate your products before you build something people don't need or aren't willing to pay for. And if you're a total beginner and you want to get started, but you don't know how, then check out our course bundle that's going to teach you how to come up with ideas, test them in the market, and build the first product with no-code tools. It breaks down everything into actionable tasks that you can actually do so you don't get stuck in analysis paralysis, and it can help you avoid working on 1,000 things and not really getting anything done. So if you're interested, you can check that out in the description. Okay, back to the video. The 5th mistake that people make when they launch their startups is really the difference between a first-time tech entrepreneur and an experienced one. And it's really very well explained in this quote by Justin Kan, who is the founder of Twitch that sold to Amazon for more than $1 billion. He said, and I quote, "First-time founders are obsessed about product. Second-time founders are obsessed with distribution." That's because products are relatively easy to build compared to getting customers for those products. And that's the reason why when people build products and then they launch them, they hear crickets, because they spent all their time building a product and not getting customers lined up for when they would actually launch. And most people mistake a product for a business, but there are so many other factors that you have to learn and implement to build a successful business. But in the early stages, the most important thing is to build an email list, start building a customer base, and build the product in parallel so that we have that beautiful product market fit, we generate revenue, and now we can start growing the business. And if you take my advice to solve these 5 problems, you're gonna find yourself in a position as an entrepreneur where you have 3 key character traits that are gonna make you a winner. So number 1, you will be self-reliant. You will know how to build out your first products, launch them in the market cost effectively. Number 2, you will know how to test and validate your ideas and build the right products for the right people, allowing you to take advantage of way more windows of opportunity in your lifetime. And number 3 is to know how to prioritize your time so you're not doing 1,000 things, but you're doing the right things, the 20% that gives you 80% of the outcomes. But everything I've talked about in this video is a waste of time unless you've actually gotten started. And so check out this video because I'm gonna be teaching you how you can test any startup idea with no code. And if you don't have an idea yet, then check out this video where I'm just gonna give you 5 no-code SaaS ideas. Let's go.